Hello, everyone. Today on Back to Basics, I'm really excited to sit down with Carl Bachmann, President and COO of Riko's Pizza. Carl just joined the team in January after a really impressive 30-year career, leading some of the names that you and I know very well, including Smashburger, BurgerFi. What makes his story really compelling is his unique combination of franchise operator experience, which I'll let him talk about, and his track record of really turning around brands. But Rico's really represents something different for him. Instead of optimizing existing operations, he's really building franchise infrastructure from scratch for this very healthy concept that's ready to scale from 12 to 50 plus locations. So, Carl, welcome to Back to Basics. Excited to have you here.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
So let's just start there. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about Riko's Pizza and what drew you to the team, really.
Absolutely. Well, like you said in the intro there, I've been in the restaurant space for my entire career, my entire life, really, even as a child. And over the last 15 years, I've done a lot of larger company turnarounds, reorganizations, taking companies through bankruptcies. So I would say in some ways hazard pay, exciting because it was rewarding in trying to save something and make something great. And along came Riko from Riko's Pizza and says, you need to come work with me and help me build this iconic brand. And my first reaction to him was, yeah, what? You got 4 corporate restaurants and 6 franchise stores or whatever you have? And I said, oh, way too small. I'm not interested. And he's like, oh, you're interested and you will be interested when you hear my story. So I did. I was intrigued, and it was exciting for me once I learned about Riko's and the unique platform, the unique product. It was really great to see the excitement of a family-run business that's trying to learn how to scale. So it was a unique opportunity instead of doing a turnaround this time, and maybe my last hurrah before I retire, maybe, which I laugh about. I'll probably never retire, but the opportunity to take this iconic family brand that does incredible volumes in the Fairfield County, Connecticut area, based in Stanford, and grow it to a regional and even a national chain. So instead of doing a turnaround, this was like a startup. So really exciting to be able to kind of take all that I've learned over the years and start something new and fresh. And so that was what intrigued me. And it's been a great ride for 6 months.
Well, and I want to dig into that moment where Riko reached out. You've got this incredibly rare perspective, both as a successful franchisee, I think at Ruby Tuesday,
Correct. Yep.
and then an executive at large scale brands. When you assess Riko's franchise model initially, what did you see that made you think this could be really attractive as a franchise business?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. First of all, the drive of Riko himself and his family and their passion for their product. When you have a founder that is so driven and focused on quality of product over everything else, nothing is more important than putting out a great quality product. It was like dear to my heart. He got pulled on the heartstrings a little bit there. So you see that he's got this unique product. He's got an incredible platform to deliver that product. And I don't mean deliver outside the 4 walls, but get it through our kitchen process. And, Riko was a carpenter and engineer kind of guy. So he took a different approach to the restaurant business, and he really found opportunities that maybe a typical restaurant guy would not have seen in how you build out the platform, the infrastructure of the business. So I saw that, and then I saw the great margins and the volumes of the corporate stores. And I realized, all right, you got all the recipe for success, right? These great locations, great people that are passionate, an incredible product. And now all you need is process. And so to me, that was an easy fit. And I think it's a great opportunity to franchise this and grow this corporately. So we're doing both, actually. And my background, I've been on the franchisor side and the franchisee side. So like you said earlier, I spent 12 years back in the late 90s as a franchisee at Ruby Tuesday, built out my franchise, had it for 12 years, grew an organization where you learn everything as a franchisee from the ground up. So I think it gives me a unique perspective. And then I went into the corporate side of things for the last 15 years doing these corporate turnarounds and really trying to help franchisees and corporate teams grow and salvage businesses. So the combination of those two things, and then looking at the great margins and the great volumes and the uniqueness of our product, really drew me to take this opportunity and have some fun growing it.
Well, and that's why I really love your story. Uh, Um, so, and I want to dig into that. Rico had organically been franchising for 6 years when you joined. Now, 2/3 of your locations are franchised, and you, as you mentioned, that's going to increase dramatically. Given all of that experience that you have as a franchisee, when you first stepped in, what were, the red flags that you saw that you knew you had to fix at Rico's before you could bring on more franchisees?
Structure and process. So I believe there's 5 key pillars to any business. And without these 5 key pillars in place, you can't grow efficiently, effectively, and you're certainly not giving the franchisees the best possible chance at success.
Mm.
And those 5 pillars were simple, and this was the gap, is having process and structure at Rico's. And those 5 pillars are number one, and always number one is infrastructure, which, by the way, that's really a fancy word for people. Having
Right.
the right people, the right skill sets, the people that know what they're doing in the right places, whether it's inside your corporate structure or even outsourced, having the right committees and teams and people to help build a brand correctly. So infrastructure, the most important asset you have is people. I've always believed in that. And so infrastructure first. Second, taste and quality of product.
Mm.
So again, I knew we had taste and quality product. I knew we were lacking in infrastructure. We needed people. We needed organizational skills put to the test. Step 3 for me in this pillars of the 5 pillars would be really defining the portfolio. So understanding the platform, the real estate site selection, inside the 4 walls, brand equity, et cetera, outside the 4 walls. So really defining your portfolio, and who your consumer is from that portfolio. Step 4 is probably the biggest one that was a challenge or an opportunity here for Rico's, was putting process in place. So I call it gold standards. But in order to deliver gold standards, you have to have systems that you can execute over and over again to get consistency. But we want to make sure the same experience you have in Stamford, Connecticut, you get in Tequesta, Florida, or Burlington, Vermont, or Naples, Florida, where we're opening soon. So it's really important that we have gold standard processes to deliver on execution and consistency. And then the 5th pillar is when you've completed 1 through 4, and you do it simultaneously, but when you really have structure in place, tell the world, which is your marketing approach. So how do you tell the world about who we are and what makes us different and what makes us unique? And I always say, how do you punch above your weight? And that's kind of step 5. So those 5 pillars is the structure that I've put in place here at Rico's, and that's what was really the opportunity here.
Well, and I hear this a lot from leaders in your position, that this, executive operational role, that people always come first. With that in mind, though, when you think about people, where does the franchisee fit into that? Is that more in the process, in the marketing, or is that top of the food chain also?
I think it's top of the food chain, but I think the most important thing to define is all the little details before you really grow and expand at a rapid rate. So I think it's a responsibility of the franchisor. And I always say to the franchisee, let us figure this out on our dime so that we've figured out how to do it right, how to execute it, so that you can go in and just execute your systems and processes, right? So to me, that's putting that franchisee on a pedestal. We don't grow exponentially fast without great franchisees. And franchisees can't be successful if we give them a product or a process that's not complete. So to me, I would put them the highest on the totem pole, right? It's almost like you take a corporate pyramid and flip it upside down, because the most important position to me is the general manager in the restaurant business, number one. And the franchisee, a lot of the time, is the operator, the general manager, especially in the beginning, or they're hiring key people to do that for them. So to me, those are probably the top of the food chain, so to speak, and really making sure that we have process in place so that we can support uh, them and allow them to focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's taking care of guests and executing the restaurant.
Well, and I would imagine that I think there's a lot of franchisors who would agree with you. What I'm curious about is based on, you've been in the industry for over 30 years doing this. What changes have you seen in the franchisee profile? Is it the same as it ever was, or is there a different kind of franchisee profile that's emerged today in the 21st century that maybe was different, um, you know, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's probably both. There's probably still a lot of the same type people trying to franchise, but I think the ones that are most successful understand that you're buying a brand. And if you're buying a brand, use the systems, use the support. When a franchisee comes in tries to reinvent the wheel, then they usually struggle, and they're very entrepreneurial. So their habit is, or their intention is, to do the right thing, but they tend to want to do things and be creative on their own. And as a result of that, they may take missteps, and sometimes big missteps. Whereas if a good corporate structure, we've taken those missteps for them, we've figured out what works and what doesn't work. When I was a franchisee back in the 90s, the most reason why we were successful at Ruby Tuesday back in the 90s, and we grew from about 80 or 90 restaurants when I started with them on the corporate side to 1,000 restaurants. And the reason why I was successful was we didn't reinvent the wheel. We had structure, systems, and process of how a great Ruby Tuesday ran back in the 90s. Now the industry's changed, and our job as franchisees, and the reason why our founder chose operators as opposed to just financial people, was he wanted to ensure operations and systems and processes. And he felt that was the highest chance of success. So I think today the franchisee world is kind of a mixed bag of kind of those one-off single operators. And then probably the more successful franchisees are the guys that know their market, know it well, and they've built out their market. So let's say they've signed a franchise agreement to build 10 restaurants in a market, and they're ready for their second or third brand in that market. They know the people, they have the infrastructure, they're solid in their real estate selection. Those people have the greatest chance of success. So I think a good franchise model blends the two. I always want to take care of that mom and pop kind of entrepreneur type person, but you also want those organizations that are ready for the next level because they can help you grow exponentially faster. So I think it's a blend of the two. Long story,
And
long answer to that
and
question.
oh no, it's all right. I mean, it actually leads me to this other question, which I hear you on the personas that and it sounds like that hasn't really changed much over the years. There's, the mom and pops, and there's the more kind of commercial franchisee. Has that ratio changed? Were there more mom and pops years ago and now there are fewer? Or is it all kind of same as it ever was? And if it is, then what's the X factor? What has changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's less of that mom and pop entrepreneurial owner operator today. I think it's more so the second group of people, which are in that organization that's structured and they're looking for the next emerging brand, or they're looking for somebody to complement their current brand. They may have a fast food burger place and now they're looking for a pizza concept, or they're probably looking for a chicken concept since that's the hottest thing in the last few years in the industry. So I think there's more of that. So I definitely think that's changed. And I think the main reason why there's more of that and less of that entrepreneurial mom and pop kind of mentality or that one off is the financial requirements are high and it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Entry level into this business is not easy for people. So I think it dissuades people, and that's a shame. And that's why we want to make sure that we balance both and give everybody an opportunity. We're going to need those larger groups to help expand ourselves faster so that we can afford to take the risks on the smaller one-off individuals that we want to give opportunity to as well. So I think that's the key.
Yep. The I'm hearing this a lot, and I want to actually come back to what you were saying about your 5 pillars and, establishing these gold standards. You've seen, I'm sure, brands stumble when they're scaling from 5 to 50 units. You had mentioned that people is this first pillar. Is that also the most common pitfall in early growth, that you just, you choose the wrong talent, or can it really does it just depend on the organization which of those pillars fall short?
Yeah, I think people's obviously the most important pillar, but I would also tell you the strategy around franchise growth is important. I think a lot of franchisors are aggressive and want to grow fast. We all want to grow fast, and I understand that. But if you grow wrong, for lack of a better term, you can really struggle. So I think they don't think about economies of scale. And I think you need to think about economies of scale from a media penetration perspective, a supply chain perspective, operational oversight perspective, and the cost of that. So I think people should grow. I always say grow like a bush, not like a vine. And what I mean by that is, you have your hub of where you're strong, where your brand is strong, and your chance for success is so much higher. So grow there and fortress and grow. Don't cannibalize, because that's the other way that some franchisees will do. They'll grow too much too close, and they'll cannibalize each other. And you see that a lot in the franchise world. But I think grow like a bush, grow outwardly, grow and fortress your brand. So you grow, you move to the next community. What I think the mistake that many franchisees make, and I've seen it in a lot of the turnarounds I did, whereas they'll grow one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, or they'll be enamored by a big city or the big city lights of LA or New York or Miami or whatever it may be. Instead of growing in hubs or these, like I call bush, grow like a bush. When you grow like a
Mhm.
vine and you dot all over the country, how can you possibly support that people from brand awareness, from supply chain? It costs more to get products there, and operational costs, getting somebody to visit that restaurant more often than not. So one of
Mm.
the things at Rico's that I decided to do right from the get-go is support some of that that we already had in place, but more importantly, focus on growing like a bush, not like a vine. And
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest pitfall of new franchises emerging, is they grow too fast and they don't think about the economy of scale when they grow.
I love that. Grow like a bush, not like a vine. Well, let's say that you're talking to a franchisee who maybe has been growing like a vine in sort of an established franchise system already, and it's someone who maybe is resistant to change and thinks this is the way to be. What have you seen work well to motivate those franchisees who are maybe, going the opposite way or sort of pushing against the what needs to be done?
I think probably the smartest thing is to lead by example and show them, how we grow as a corporate structure. So if you look at it's funny because it's so simple to think about. When you hear about a new emerging chain, they always grow in a cluster. Always.
Mm.
Why? Because that's where their brand expansion goes, right? They grow in one or two clusters. And then as soon as they decide to franchise, they decide, oh, it's okay, we can grow everywhere, right? So we're risking the franchisee's success. So I think when you have a franchisee that says, hey, I have one over here and I want to open one 500 miles away, we can point to all the failures in the industry and look at the ones that are successful. And the ones that are successful, especially on the corporate side and corporate growth, they always grow like that cluster, or like I say, as a bush. So to me, I think it's showing them the corporate structure and how we grew. And even if you look at Rico's and how they grew as a family restaurant chain, they grew in Fairfield County in Connecticut, and they grew, 5 miles down the road, 10 miles down the road, and they just slowly extended out. And we continue to do that. Yet then we tell a franchisee that they can open one in, you know, I don't know, pick Virginia and then one in Maine. And it's not sensible, and they need to see corporate growth. So it's just logical to think, it's illogical really to think that you can't grow the same way as a corporate grows. You should grow the same way. So if we pick a franchisee for a market, they should stay inside that market. That
Well,
to
then
me is the easiest way to be successful.
that makes a ton of sense to me. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is what would you say to brands that have a franchisee only model that have no corporate stores? Or, I guess what's your opinion on that model to begin with?
Well, some have succeeded, more so have failed. And I think because I believe that the franchisor should always have some skin in the game.
Mm,
We should always have some skin in the game. We should be modeling the right activities. We should be doing the testing. We should be doing the menu innovation. And not that you can't get great ideas from franchisees. I get a lot of great ideas from franchisees, but all that stuff should be done on the franchisor's dime, as I think I mentioned earlier. And I think
hmm
when you don't have skin in the game, it's very hard to lead a franchise only model if you don't understand what that franchisee is going through every day. So I always believe that a great ratio, somewhere between 20 and 30% of your entire portfolio should be corporately owned.
Hmm.
Some franchises, though, that are franchise led only, if you look at the ones that are successful, those franchisees also grow in clusters. They don't grow,
Hmm.
all over the country zigzagging.
So this is everything I'm hearing still kind of comes back to you. It sounds like you've developed a lot of trust, but you've also got you figured out or cracked the code on also how to get franchisee buy-in. And one of the areas I really wanted to focus on with you is this idea of the people development of franchisees, um, specifically franchise owners today. So walk me through who would be like a best in breed or, model franchise operator today.
I love people to have experience in the restaurant space. Um, I think the best franchise model is probably somebody who has infrastructure already in place.
Mm,
So when I mean infrastructure, I mean they have teams, they're familiar with their region from a marketing standpoint, but also from a real estate site selection standpoint. I said earlier, location, people, process, product. So if or location, product, people, process, but the bottom line is I think that is probably the most important thing for them. So if you're looking at a successful franchisee, they've probably built out a market. They're probably looking at the second type brand for them. I think those are have the highest chance of success because they understand their market, they understand their people, they have their infrastructure, they're financially sound, and they understand the restaurant model. So usually those people that
mm.
have already built out their first development agreement with another brand and they realize they can't build any more XYZ restaurant in that market. Now they go to that second or third brand. So I think that's the most successful
Hmm.
model that I see today.
And, and the model that you're speaking to is a more experienced franchise owner. What have you found are some of the most critical skills to develop within these franchise owners when they join the brand initially? I.e., um, are there areas that are more quote unquote trainable than others when it comes to skills that you need to see in them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for us is their ability to understand how to execute a restaurant. I think there's a lot
Mm,
of when you have people from another industry, there's a lot of glamour around, wow, I'm going to own a restaurant or I'm going to own a nightclub or I'm going to own a bar. They don't understand the hard work and efforts that it takes. And it takes a village and it takes a platform. It takes a training platform. It takes an ability to understand how to train, develop people. So we always have all of our franchisees going forward train in our corporate restaurants. We ask our franchise operators whether they're going to day-to-day operate or not to also train in our restaurants so they understand kind of the plight. What are the
mm,
challenges? We also started including them in a learning management system, which I know you're familiar with. So we've launched Opus and giving them a platform so where they can learn right on their phones, learn the different languages, understand what our brand standards are, what our expectations are. To me, that's the biggest breakthrough. When that franchisee comes in and signs the papers, they think they're ready to go, and then they go and spend 6 weeks training in one of our restaurants, and that's those guys that spend that time and take that seriously. They have the highest level of success. So
right.
I think that's key.
It's the brand knowledge that's really so. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think you think about everyone has their franchise university for initial onboarding. So I want to dig into that for a minute. You said they spent 6 weeks in the stores, but how do you approach ongoing development for franchisees and their GMs? What does beyond that 6 week period, you said, if they complete that well and they pay attention and they do it successfully, then they are successful. But what does effective continuing education look like for these franchise operators?
Yeah, I think that's a huge opportunity for us at Rico's understanding as we add these
Uh,
franchisees, and we're in this kind of rapid growth stage. How do we create ongoing education, which I think is what you're asking about? And I think
yeah,
again
yeah.
that learning platform is where you expand there. Um, I also think that it shouldn't be limited to just restaurant operations. I think that's where it starts. They need to
Hmm.
master that, but I think there's P&L review, there's accounting review. um, I think really taking training to a next level above and beyond running a restaurant and running a business is how you evolve those franchisees. And I don't know a lot of franchisor groups that do a great job there. I think that's a huge
Hmm.
gap in our industry and an opportunity. Um, so one of the things that we've already started is creating a franchise relationship manager that's going to help our franchisees and visit our franchisees, um, and
Cool.
educating them on kind of the back office or the accounting side, some of the opportunities, the tax implications of owning a franchise. We can't do that for the franchisee, but we can educate them on what we've gone through, and again, learn from our mistakes, learn from our growth. So I do think that's an evolving opportunity, probably in every small emerging brand across the country.
Yeah, and some of what I heard you say is throughout this conversation is Rico's and just your own philosophy is around on the spectrum of doing it for them and figuring it out for themselves. You're sort of finding this balance between let me show you how we do it and let me take the risk off of your plate. But I really like what you're saying around the continuing education piece. I have heard this continually from uh, franchisors that the financial acumen piece, whether you're a mom and pop or whether you're, a well-known operator, is the number one opportunity for ongoing education. I don't want to sound trite by asking this, but why? you know, why does the ongoing development of the fight of you know being able to read a P&L, why is that so important?
I think once you get into that second location, I think that's when kind of the oh no, uh-oh, aha moment all hits you, and you say, "Wow, now I have to duplicate." You know, it's like instant gratitude, right? It's instant gratification. If you run one restaurant as an operator, whether you're an owner operator, whether you have a general manager or not, something wrong in the restaurant, your labor's not right, your food quality's not right, you go in and fix the problem, right? You go in and fix it yourself. I do it myself. Now what happens is you've added number two or number three or number four, and now you have to start really training and teaching. And now it's the art of persuasion. It's like the difference between a general manager and a director of operations or a regional multi-unit position. The skill set's completely different. And I think that's the
Hmm.
same for the franchisee. Now you've got to understand that I can't be in all places at once. I can't be in every restaurant on Friday night. If I have two restaurants, I can only be in one. If I have three, I can only be in one. So what do I do at that point? And that's when training becomes the ultimate, the ultimate need, right? Is let me understand and train these people so they understand how I would do things, how I would act. And, one of the things I've done in all my years of being in operations is try to model the right activity,
Mm.
model it every day and every visit. So to this day, if I walk in a restaurant and it's busy or even if it's not, I'm bussing tables, I'm talking to guests, I'm creating kind of those management figure eights in the restaurant so that people understand that model the right, activities so that you can develop these people. So when you get to that second and third restaurant, you're going to have to start focus on financial acumen. You're going to have to start focusing on accounting. You're not going to be able to focus on the day-to-day operation. So to me, that's where that kind of lever goes off and you're like, aha, I need to learn. I need to have training. I need to have systems and processes because I need to get to the art of duplication. how do I duplicate service, expectations, quality, profitability. So to me, that's when that moment hits. And a good franchisor will have those processes in place, the training and the development, which is what we're focused on in Riko's now as we expand, is to have those things in place so that franchisee has a chance at success in unit 2,
Hmm.
unit 3, unit 4. So to me, that's
I think
where the rubber hits the road.
that is, I have lots of these conversations, and I think what you just said is probably the most well articulated response to that
Oh, yeah.
answer of why.
After
um,
some years and
well,
years of making mistakes, right? You try not to make the same mistake twice. You learn from your mistakes.
it just makes so much sense. You hear this a lot. Well, they need to learn the P&L, they need to know how to read it. But there has to be this deeper why. And I think that's why you see a lot of franchisees not connect with that. Every business owner, regardless of who you are, even in tech, you have to learn, okay, I got from 1 to 10, how do I get from 10 to 100? And all of it comes back to the data and the numbers. Yeah.
And you can't understand the numbers if you're caught up in
In the day to day.
in the day
Yeah.
to day because you didn't develop the team. So that's where the rubber hits the road every time.
So, Carl, this has been a great conversation. I loved the arc of this conversation. I want to finish out with our back to basic lightning round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
Okay.
Try to answer them as quickly as you can.
All right.
No need for justification or anything like that. Just a good way for listeners to get to know you. First question, what was your first job ever?
Paper route.
What is the restaurant trend that you are completely over?
Complete over with?
Yeah.
Like done with?
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing about chicken. I'm in the pizza business.
I had a hunch that was going to be the answer. What's the last book you read or podcast you listened to?
I've been listening to a lot of Joe Rogan because, it's so controversial. And I'm trying to think
Yeah.
what the last book I read, but um, I read the 1 Minute Manager and Raving Fans all the time. I just read Raving Fans again. I've read it, 1,000 times in my life, but I read it again. And I share that a lot with like my team.
Do you get something new out of 1 Minute Manager every time, or is it just a good refresh?
I think as you get older and more experienced, you get something different out of it every time. It's such a simple book, but
Yeah.
it's a great refresh, but it does give me a different perspective.
Hmm.
It's more so fun watching someone else read it and come back to you like, aha.
Is that the same author as Who Moved My Cheese?
It's Ken Blanchard. Yeah, I believe. I'm
Okay.
not sure if
Yeah.
did you write that one? I think he
It
did.
was in kind of the same era, I think.
Same era,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of old books
Yeah.
and I've read
Old
I
thin
just read
books.
Stephen Covey's 7 Habits too again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Recently read that again.
Good
That's
one.
another kind of, you pick up something new every time. That was a big thing again in the
Sure.
80s and 90s. Guess I'm showing my age.
So, eh, getting back to basics, what is something that you are learning or getting back to basics on personally?
In work or in life?
Whatever strikes your fancy.
In life, I think balance. Finding balance. I have 2 wonderful granddaughters. One is only 9 months old, and trying to find just a little bit of time to lay on the ground and play with her and watch her learn and crawl, and so that would be
Yeah.
balance. And in work, I think I enjoy realizing that I enjoy teaching as much as anything else. So it's really trying to teach my team.
Hmm. I can relate to that. Last question. If you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Balance, find balance. Don't be
Yeah.
don't make your wife a restaurant widow. Find balance.
Carl, thank you so much for joining. That was incredible. I really appreciate you joining us today. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you. My pleasure. Enjoyed it.